everyone, and welcome to this roundtable for the 2022 Cambridge Festival of Science, given in partnership with Cambridge Service Alliance and the Center for Housing and Planning Research. We are going to discuss the future of housing in the digital era, and for this we have a set of researchers here at the University of Cambridge and a professional guest speaker in link construction. Before jumping into the roundtable, I would like to give you some background information that will help you follow the upcoming roundtable. There are many views on how the future of housing should look like. The first predominant view is the technology-based one. Here we talk about the application of digital technologies to enhance the living experience. From sensors to robots, interaction with the user and the house. The goal here is to automate most of the tasks at home. For example, you can use sensors to know in real time your energy consumptions and water consumptions. We even talk about the possibility of selling the surplus of energy that your house produces to your neighbors. Another example is the ability of your home to know exactly what products are missing and order them online for you, so you don't have to do shoppings anymore. There are many use cases of the technology view, as you might imagine. The second view is about the seamless experience that comes before actually living in the house. This experience starts from being able to order your house the same way you can order any consumer product. In other words, you have many options to choose from. So you have 100% the possibility to customize your own house. The house then is built using offsite manufacturing, which is a technique that builds the house in the factory as opposed to on site. The good thing about this technique is that you can have your house ready in a matter of weeks or even days, as opposed to months. Another view talks about 3D printing as the future of housing, which means that you will have your house built using a huge 3D printer that comes to on site, and in a matter of days, the house will be ready. As you can see, there are many views, and that is quite impressive. But one thing for sure is that the future of housing should first and foremost answer the need of the future generation. For that, there are some key principles that I think we all agree on. The first one is about customer-centric type of housing. There are many end users with different needs and preferences, and the future of house should respect that and even more value that. Second point is energy efficiency. The house of the future should be energy efficient, even more produce energy, not even consume it. And more importantly, the source of energy is also important. It also goes with it the sustainability matters, which mean green spaces. I think the future of housing should also look like a synergy between our space and the green spaces as well. Next is affordability. There is also safety, which is important now. And what I mean by this, not only the health, not only the physical safety, but also the health safety. Last thing is about the flexibility. And this is including the business model innovation, but also all the incentives and the supports given to the buyer that will acquire the first house. We're going to share all those points and expand them during this roundtable. And for that, we have an amazing panel of 3 participants. I'm going to start by Dr. Mohammed Zaki, who is the Deputy Director of Cambridge Service Alliance, which is a research center that brings together the world's leading firms and academics to address service challenges. So Dr. Mohammed Zaki, thank you for being here.
Thanks for the invitation. Thanks so much.
Can you please share with us your research and responsibility quickly?
And so, as being introduced, I'm running the research center here in Cambridge University, specifically in engineering departments called Cambridge Service Alliance. It's a research center that brings industry consortiums with academics to address some of the key challenges that organizations face in the world of services, and in particular, digitalization at the moment. And we try to engage and collaborate with them to build some research portfolio, tools, framework, new thinking as well to help them really change their process and procedures to enable them really to address some of these key challenges in the future.
Thank you very much. The next guest panel is Dr. Gemma Burgess, who is the Director of the Center for Housing and Planning Research. Thank you, Dr. Gemma, for attending. Can you share with us your research and engagements with the industry, especially the housing stakeholders?
Thank you very much. So yes, I'm the director of the Cambridge Centre for Housing and Planning Research. So the research that we do at the centre works with a range of partners, including government, industry, the third sector. So we work with a lot of charitable foundations and with academic organisations across a whole range of different housing topics. So everything from how to tackle homelessness, how to deliver affordable housing, right through to the topics that we're talking about today, which broadly speaking looks towards the future of housing. So this is questions around how will we deliver new homes in the future? What's the role of modular and off-site construction? How do we innovate digitally in the housing sector? How do we put customers at the heart of housing delivery? And then connected to that, how do we deliver smart homes that are going to meet the needs of an aging population? How are we going to deliver housing in the future that's sustainable, that's net zero? And so these are the sorts of questions that we work on. And then connected to that, how does that fit into the broader picture of things like smart cities? You know, how will this connected world connect to the homes that we also live in?
Thank you very much. Our last speaker is Mr. Alan Musman. So Mr. Alan Musman is a lean construction expert and has also coached design and construction teams adopting lean thinking. So thank you, Alan Musman, for being here. Would you expand a little bit on your research interests as well and the impact you had on the construction industry overall?
Thank you very much, Zachariah. I've been working for the last 20 years with lean, mostly in the construction sector. And I'm now pretty much retired. And the project I'm working on is I've been asked to write a book about why construction is broken, why it consistently fails to deliver what customers want. My focus has not been on the residential sector, it's been on the building and infrastructure sectors. But as I've been starting to look at the residential sector for this panel, I can see ways in which it's broken here too, but it's in a different way than it's broken in the building, engineering and infrastructure sectors.
Thank you, quite interesting. Looking forward to this conversation. Before jumping into the future, let's start with the present. The current demand of housing exceeds the supply. In fact, the current government's aspiration to build 300,000 new dwellings annually and to deliver 1.5 million homes by 2022 seems to be far from attainable. So Dr. Gemma Burgess, can you expand a little bit on this point and share with us some background information about these statistics?
Certainly. So there are two components to housing supply. Most of it is our existing stock, the homes that we've already got. More than 85% of our housing supply is the homes that we've already built. But what we're focusing on here, I think, in this conversation is around the new build supply, so the new homes that we want. So the figure that you mentioned, 300,000 new homes a year, there's general consensus that that's the number of new homes that we need every single year to meet unmet need. This is partly because we're all living longer. So we're housing 4 generations instead of 3 in our housing stock. It's also a consequence of changing demographics. People live in smaller households, they live in more diverse households. So what this is doing is driving up demand for housing. But what we consistently see is that we get nowhere near 300,000 homes every year in terms of new build supply. We get close to half on a good year, but mostly we are a long way off that target in terms of new build supply. The consequence is that it pushes up house prices, makes housing more unaffordable, it adds to the long waiting list for social housing, it exacerbates homelessness, and it means that people have to live in the increasingly insecure private rented sector.
Thank you. This is interesting because the experience of living is also dictated by factors fixed way before delivering the house. So the design and construction phase play huge roles, I assume, as well. So Alan Musman wrote a great piece about why construction is currently broken, as he said. Can you briefly summarize this and expand the key areas you think the housing sector is impacted, specifically by the current business model?
I think one of the problems is the failure to integrate the design of our communities with the design of the production system. And there, even before that, there are problems with the design, the way land use is planned. It means that the focus is on low density housing outside the major conurbations. And that means that there is a tendency to focus on the car. Chris Alexander said, I think in 1972, first comes the road network, then building, and only then do the design teams think about the pedestrian space. I know Mohammed is really keen on creating a seamless living experience. And I don't feel that doing urban planning in that way is a way to create a seamless living experience. It actually creates barriers in the living experience. It's really important that we start by thinking about people and work out from people, using active travel to take us as far as we can, as has been the case in Cambridge for many, many years now. But if you get out into Huntingdonshire and so on, it's much more difficult to see that kind of community. And so if we can get more compact communities, higher density communities, costs are going to come down. We're going to be taking up less land for housing so that we've got more land for recreation, for growing food, and all the other things that we need to support us. And food security, as we've seen over the last 2 or 3 months with what's going on in Ukraine, is becoming more and more of an issue. And that too is going to play, having higher density communities is going to reduce our need for oil and gas. Mm-hmm. So there are all sorts of benefits that as a country we're going to get if we can get higher density communities where it's much easier to walk and cycle. I'm going to shut up there.
Thank you. Thank you. It's extremely interesting, by the way. And you spoke about the customer experience, which is one of the key components of this model innovation. So I'd like to go to Dr. Mohammed Zaki and your key research entitled Customer Experience Challenges, breaking together the digital, physical, and social realms, which is quite a big jump from the conventional way of looking at customer experience. So can you please expand a little bit on this research and how we can borrow some of the key concepts from this research to imagine the future of housing?
Okay, so thanks, Zachary. So I think just to pick up some of the things that have been discussed here with the team. So if you think about the way we live at the moment, we think that we're living in an experience economy, right? So there are some facts, predictions, support that human needs better experience now for firms that are delivering to them any services, including, in this case, housing and construction, where we talk about. And these kind of facts and figures comes from a lot of market practitioners who went to ask and surveys a lot of consumers across different sectors, including constructions, what they need really to enable that seamless experience to happen. Factors like speed, right, in the process, which is, again, there's a lot of problem here in construction and delivering houses in that case. Convenience as well, so what things that can make this convenient for the future consumers, and helpful increase, right? So these are the key dimensions that actually a lot of human beings or people in general need from the future service that we look at. Another dimension is caring about them. So starting to think about the emotional elements here. So caring about, what they need and what they want, and actually how we can personalize that to their needs and their wants. Consistency is one of the experience. So sometimes when You communicate with firm specifically across different sectors. You can think about some of the channels are great experience, but other channels are really bad experience. And in the future, I think the future consumer here or future user, and specifically in the housing constructions, want that consistency to be happened in essence. And the way we think about it is actually because there is a huge push. So if I'm thinking about the firm consumer or the firm to firm relationship, and could be constructed business to business or business to consumer, which is the end user. They focus more, firms from firm perspective, they focus more about investing heavily in the digitalization to enable that seamless experience to be happening. You can name it by the things that you discussed early on in the presentation. So how to apply, I would say, predictive capabilities, to enable us really to deliver what we want to deliver to our consumers. And why the digital is here really an important component from a firm perspective is because it can give these firms the speed, right? So they can deliver quicker in some instances, the reach as well. They can reach bigger customers. So think about digital apps, think about the smart, if you like, technologies that could be implemented inside the house. It could be having a lot of consumers' information as well. That's a big element, so we can understand their behavioral, aspects when they are using specific appliances or specific, capabilities inside the house or the building in that instance. So all these kind of advantage and opportunity, it could change behavior as well, right? So when the technology has been applied well and there is a lot of adaptation, that's changed the consumer behavior or the user behavior into the good or bad. So according how really the, if you like, the technology implemented and how it's really have some beneficial to the user. This is a problem when it comes to digitalizations. Sometimes we forget about the physical part, right? So when we integrate digitalization with physical, is not that easy journey for firms to be implemented. It's new capabilities. It's very complex. Don't forget as well, this organization doesn't come from that domain. So always we're hearing about digitalization is very mature in this top digital born organization who spend and invest heavily in these capabilities to enable this to be happening. The last thing that I would like to add here is actually the social part, right? So actually this is Alan what trying to really push here in his argument. The human-to-human interaction. So what does it mean when we bring in the digitalization in all our world and even in the housing and construction world here? We are pushing non-human interactions most of the time, or we still have that human-to-human interactions, or the human actors, because again, construction, building houses is very complex. It has a lot of stakeholders involved. So how we can really configure the future services for our end users, whether it is a consumer, whether it is a businesses in this world, to enable really these configurations make sense and actually work as well in a very easy way. Because once you involve all these components together, it builds a complex service. And if it's not designed very well, the whole configuration could be a hassle and actually could be really disruptive for consumers and not actually what it's actually promised to do, which is the hassle-free and easy way to do or the seamless experience in itself. Obviously, this has opened a lot of opportunities for firms when they're starting to integrate the digital, physical, social components, but open a lot of challenges as well. How you do this integration in terms of regulation, capability, and all sorts of other channels like regulations and etc. Right? Happy to deep dive in the challenge, but probably I will freeze here just to get my point at that time. Thank you.
Thank you, extremely interesting. And I would like to actually build upon this, what you said about this customer experience, and by a real case study here, which is COVID, with the whole work home configuration. As you all know, things drastically changed with COVID. Now there are remote work policies, and many people now opt for working from home or a split 2-3 days. So Dr. Burgess, for example, let's start with you. Do you think the current housing sector is ready to accommodate such policies? And from a policy point of view, and what can we do about it for building this image of the future of housing?
Well, you're quite right that COVID has certainly changed the way in which we work. I think the fact that we're all locked in our homes today is a consequence of COVID in our household, which is the situation I'm in today, and yet I can still come to work, I think shows the massive shift that we've seen over the last 2 years. I think there are different aspects to this. So I think on the one hand, this is about how do we want to work going forward? And generally, all studies show that what people now want is some flexibility. You know, across sectors, people want some ability to work from home, and they want to spend some time in the office. So what we're seeing is a reconfiguration of work contracts, home workspaces, and a demand for space to work at home. But that's not equal. Not everybody can work from home. There are certain jobs, there are certain sectors where that's not possible, and we shouldn't forget that when we plan for this digitized future. There are some jobs that always require people to go to work. Equally, there are some socioeconomic groups where working from home is not really a very good option. If you're trying to homeschool, you're all trying to work from home, but you don't have reliable broadband, you don't have an affordable internet connection. This is where digital exclusion and inclusion, I think, becomes very important. Not all homes are well equipped to work from home. If you live in a shared house, you will know that that's not been a great experience. Equally, if you live in certain sorts of flats, it's very difficult to get fast fiber broadband. If you live in a household that's overcrowded, even if you can afford the broadband, it's still not very easy to work in a home that looks like that. I think the other thing that we've seen is some things have not changed. So we work a lot with the Housing Association Places for People. During the pandemic, they asked 10,000 of their customers, what do you want most from your homes? Yes, they want space to work, but they also want 2 parking spaces. So I think we're caught in a moment where we see tensions in what we want from our homes and what we expect our housing and wider infrastructure to deliver. I think this speaks to Alan's point earlier. We're still very car dependent in what we seek from our housing, but we do want that flexibility to work from home. So I think we're in a time of flux where what we demand from our housing is changing, but we're still very stuck on certain things like our dependence on our cars. We want the luxury to work from home, but we still want to drive to the office.
Really interesting. I'd like to go to Alan Musman from a technical point of view about this flexible housing. From a design and construction perspective, as you're from supply chain construction also background, do you think it's possible for the future homes to be flexible?
I know it's possible because it's been done. There's a community in just outside Stockholm where it was basically modular in design and construction. But as people moved through their lives, they added bits because the family was growing. And then rather than downsizing and having to move, they were able to transfer bits to the people next door so that they had access to what had previously been their own space, that their neighbor's space, they had access to it, or they could sell the package so that it could be lifted off and craned into another house. So that kind of thing, I think, is possible. And so I wonder how easy that is with 3D printed homes, but it's certainly, with planning, possible with off-site fabricated ones. There's a fascinating book called How Buildings Learn: What Happens After They Are Built. And it chronicles the life of houses all over the world and how they've adapted to changing use. They started off as affluent houses, they got split up and got used for housing, and then they got gentrified and went up the pecking order again, and so on. So that if we build, if our designs are open designs, so we've got open building, it becomes possible to do that. If we try and crank everything down to the most minimal things, the flexibility is potentially lost.
Thank you. I'd like to expand on this with Dr. Zaki. You published recently a paper with Microsoft on the thriving experience in physical working spaces. So it's called Measuring Thriving Experience in Physical Working Spaces. Can you a little bit talk about this paper and what are the key learnings from this one into designing the future of digital houses? I remember one of the case studies you worked on this is about the lighting. So how the lights in the room should also be adaptable based on what we're doing. So there are many key learnings, I think, and if you can talk more about this and how we can design the future of housing based on this research.
So I guess pick up on what we discussed as well. So how we can leverage the digital technology here to enable us to increase the well-being, inside the houses, and how we can advise basically, our future households, about the best way to live basically inside their houses. So it was a question about can, through the images and videos ethically, obviously, right, that could come from our engagement digitally through, for example, Teams and Zoom and all other web, if you like, meetings, to come up with the right pictures around, that room that you are living inside. That's just for example, and just can recommend, because the lighting, for example, is not suitable, and can increase the lighting for to to really build some good well-being here. Can we have some of activities like ordering things on your backgrounds and stuff like this? So again, the key things that came from the paper: can we leverage this kind of vision, digital capabilities, and we recommend better, if you like, solutions in that sense, and to the consumers or the customer on that side, to enable them really to live well and actually doesn't have these exhaustions from all these digital. Obviously, this is not going to minimize it, but at least improve a little bit the well-being when we are interacting and engaging a lot with digital technologies. Given there is a lot of push now that you are engaging with a lot of platforms, which keep us exhausting. So can the layout of the room that you are sitting on be better to enable you increase your productivity, for example, increase your well-being? So that was just a proposition to see whether this digital technology not only use the function which is engaged with other on that side, but actually as well improve our well-being when we engage with it as well.
Thank you very much, Dr. Zaki. I would like also to a little bit expand on the latest report you wrote, Dr. Gemma Burgess, about accelerating modern method of construction, delivering homes for the future, which was a report in partnership with one of the key players in the housing sector. So if you can briefly, quickly summarize the context why you thought it's important to write this piece, and also summarize it for us about the key learnings of those delivering homes for the future.
Thank you. Yeah, so a lot of the work that we've been doing over the last couple of years has been looking at how do we deliver housing in new ways. So this is about how do we build houses off-site? How do we build houses in a modular fashion? How do we increase the use of modern methods of construction? So really this is thinking about how do we boost that pre-manufactured value? How do we build houses in a way that by the time they actually get to the site, they're mostly already built? With the idea being that this would speed up the speed of construction, that this was a more sustainable way to build, that it's a more efficient way to build because it doesn't require so many on-site trades, that it can increase the energy efficiency because the homes are built in slightly different ways. So there are a whole range of potential benefits. However, this is not really new technology. And so the question here is, why has this been so hard to do? And there are lots of constraints specifically in the housing sector that make it quite hard to really boost the uptake of modern methods of construction. So some of this is around finance, so accessing finance to be able to fund this sort of development, particularly the capital investment needed to build this at scale. But it's also about bringing lenders on board, mortgage lenders, insurers. What they see in these products is a degree of risk because there isn't the data about their in-use performance. And so the risks push the costs up of the finance and the lending packages around. There's also the issue of pipeline. The way we build houses in this country is we bring them to the market at the rate that the market will absorb. House builders have a rule of thumb about how many homes that means in a week, in a month, in a year. But a factory, if you build homes in a factory, needs constant production. So there's a mismatch between the pipeline that comes out of a housing factory and the demand on site, and that very careful equilibrium of market prices. So what we've been looking at is how do we get around some of these challenges? You know, how do we work with the industry to help get around some of the problems and actually boost the supply of modular housing? And this is around policy, it's around working with lenders, insurance, warranty providers. It's about how do we match that pipeline up? Can the public sector be part of that solution in providing the pipeline that's needed to keep those factories going? And also it's about research. We would say that as academics, but there's a need here for better data. You know, how do we show that the benefits that we believe exist by building off-site, by building modular homes, actually exist? You know, how do we capture that evidence and show the sector the benefits of building in this way? And also, coming back to Mohammed's point, how do we show that these homes work for the people that live in them? You know, how do we collect that post-occupancy data? How do we show that these are good homes for people to live in the future?
Thank you very much. Alan, any additions or thoughts about all those key points here?
Yes, picking up what Gemma was saying about a pipeline of work. There's been an interesting case in the Netherlands of a house builder who would never commit to start or finish on particular dates. He said, if you want us to build, you tell us what you want us to build, and we will start it when it's the right time in the pipeline, and we will probably finish it before anyone else who, if you gave them this work and told them when to start, could finish it. Because we are maintaining a pipeline of work across the Netherlands, and we have teams moving from one site to the next as they, you know, the foundation team moves straight on to the next site. And you keep those teams together. Much of the prefabrication is done on site, and precast concrete panels are then lifted into place. But you could operate this same way if you were to focus on level loading the builders rather than operating when the developers are ready.
Right, quite impressive. And we talk a lot about house buildings. So this is from the perspective of the unit, which is the house. If we move to the city and the district level, Alan Mossman, what do you think about the complementarity when we talk about designing the future of housing, digital housing? What about also the district level and the future of cities as well? So if you can talk a little bit more about a macro perspective that is city design, not the house in it.
Okay. I think I have been drawn into this conversation exactly where I didn't want to be, which was thinking about estates of very similar style of housing, very similar income levels moving into this new estate. One of the things about redevelopment, gentrification, all sorts of things in cities and urban areas is that you get a much richer mix of housing types, income levels, and so on. Many developers, particularly in London, but I also see it around here in Gloucestershire, try to create ghettos. There'll be a low-income ghetto, a middle-income ghetto, and an upper-income ghettos, but they're in effect ghettos. Rather than a good mixture, so that in Downton Abbey terms, you've got the servants living close enough that they can come and service the people who live in the abbey, and everyone in between. So I think we're going to get much more vibrant communities if we can facilitate that full level human interaction. And Mohammed talked earlier about digitizing to facilitate human-to-human interaction. And I think that the test of whether it is worth digitizing this particular part of the process is, does it facilitate human-to-human interaction? We all have our ups and downs. Things go well, things go badly. We're working for P&O and suddenly we're not working for P&O, and both husband and wife are working for P&O. So, oh, wow, our prospects have changed. We may need to change our housing in the process. Or we've decided to take a family from Lviv or Kiev or Lviv or wherever. We could use a little bit more space. How do we add that on? So having that flexibility, I think, is going to be really, really important as we move forward in the future.
Thank you. To complement what you said, Dr. Gemma Burgess, you wrote a paper about the ethical underpinnings of smart city governance. So my question to you is about whether you think we need a new governance for not only smart housing in the digital era, but also about the city, the future of cities. So if you can a little bit talk about this piece of work and what do you mean by smart city governance?
So yes, thank you. So when we think about the amount of data that we now produce, so smart cities really are a way for city governors to use that data to try and manage urban problems, to use data to manage congestion, to manage air quality. So the idea is that all that data that's out there can be captured, used, modeled to help those who run cities to manage that better, with the aim of improving the life, the quality of life for the residents that live there. Now, they're all great aspirational goals. The technology is still developing, but our paper is not looking at the technology. The questions that we're asking is, who gets to decide what's a good topic for a smart city project to work on? Who gets to decide what data should be collected from whom? Who gets to choose whether they participate in a smart city, and who gets to decide that they don't want to take part? Who sets the agenda for how those data points are going to be used and for what sorts of problems? So I think what we're saying there is that, just as Alan and Mohammed have been saying, we shouldn't forget the human aspect. And when we think about a smart city, when we think about data modeling a city to tackle urban problems, we have to remember that the heart of that is the people that live there, their aspirations, what they want from their city, and what they see as the most important things. And I think this reflects all the way down to individual homes. So if we think about smart homes, the Internet of Things, the increasing use of sensors, of AI and machine learning to manage things like care within the home. As this technology develops, as the way in which we use our homes and technology develops so rapidly, it raises questions around ethics, around data, around privacy. You know, who gets the ethical say over who uses the data that might be collected from the objects, the Internet of Things in your home? If instead of receiving person-to-person care as we age in our homes, instead we have support systems run by sensors, by machine learning, by AI, by algorithms, what are the ethical issues that arises there? You know, what do we gain and maybe what do we lose as we move into this increasingly technology-centered world?
I don't know, Dr. Zaki, if you have any thoughts, you're welcome. I'm going to move on.
I will pick up a little bit as well from Gemma's comments about the technology itself. So when really, from organization perspective, when they really investing, or from a government perspective, investing in the future of smart cities, or that ecosystem starting to push into that directions, the world we live in, driverless car as well. So if you're talking about, you know, how to connect all these entities together, like Gemma was saying, the question is here whether technology is mature enough, right? Because again, the one of the big problems and aspirations here, obviously the ethical consideration, regulatory challenges, and etc. But technology maturity here is important because you are doing this to really increase well-being, experience, living experience, and etc. But once the technology doesn't do what it's purpose to do, it's starting to get a lot of problems and challenges. Failures across entities will happen. Bear in mind as well, this kind of data sharing. So if you think about machine learning and AI, to enable to do what we want them to do in that smart city, you need to share this information across entities. How this can be allowed, like Jimas was saying, who own this data? Is the government? Is the customer? Is the organization? Is the automotive car? So to build that holistic approach and we go toward that smart city, this data sharing, barriers will be a big challenge. Then on top of that, the maturity. Are we there yet to enable us really to play with this and actually risk some of the problems could be really encountered in the future? Now, the key things is actually all this can open a lot of opportunities, but without understand what resource we have versus the future capabilities that we have and how we balance that, it might have some problems. Bear in mind, we need to think more about the base of the pyramids. There are areas doesn't have the infrastructures to enable us to do so. There are areas worldwide as well. I'm not thinking only in UK. But worldwide, there are areas that still have some problems about water. Areas still have a problem about internet doesn't reach there and connection. And if we think about the future of digitalization, you need to solve the infrastructure problem first before you go to that holistic approach that we can go fast and forward. That doesn't mean, this vision might not happen. It might happen, but it will take time in terms of conservative approach, how to tackle problem by problem to enable to take this forward, basically. But without dealing and address some of the key fundamental challenges, that's including the technology maturity itself, and the ethical condition and the base of pyramids, it sometimes will struggle to get that into a coherent, if you like, concept.
If I may build on that and go back to Jama's question, who gets to decide what gets researched and so on on the smart city thing? I was reminded of the fourth of the Reith lectures last year, where Stuart Russell was talking about how you prevent AI and machine learning systems from taking over and dominating what's happening. And I hope that that is also part of your research, so that humans remain in control.
Well, thank you, Alan. And I would like to really develop this point with Dr. Mohammed Zaki, technology-wise. More specifically, your key research, latest research last year about using AI to track how customer feels in real time. This research was published in Harvard Business Review. So now we're talking about AI. Let's talk the case of housing. Specifically with Alexa, for example, we have many apparels at home that tracks people's voice and movements. What do you think about this issue of data rights? And while the benefit in terms of smart homes is clear, what about the human side? We don't want to be tracked. We don't want to give our rights and privacy at the same time. So how do you see it from your point of view?
So let me clarify something about the title and the reflection of the study itself. So typically traditional approaches to ask customer feedback is after delivering a service or a product, so a customers or consumer, you follow up with a feedback process, right? So this could be through traditional survey ways or digital channels where you leave your reviews about that service and product. The question is typically organization or most of organization following traditional ways, which is called Net Promoter Score. It's just a simple metric where they ask the customer a scale question in this survey saying, can you recommend us to your colleague about the service that you delivered. And then the customer here, whether it is a B2B or a B2C in that area, can go, I don't know, 9 out of 10, for example. That means in organization kind of measures, that's a promoter customers because he's happy, he's delighted about the service. That's why he's going to be advocate and going to go and promote our services to our, if you like, colleague or friends or family and etc. And if you've got like 7 to 9 or whatever, right, that's actually he's a detractor in that case. Sorry, he's a passive customers, and below 7 is detractor. So just a simple metric, simple survey. Others use other metrics, but traditionally, most organizations, including construction companies, house providers, use these kind of surveys to enable them to understand whether the customer is really happy about the service or not. We're starting to find, customers report to customers in different channels. So not only the survey, so we call companies in call centers. We discuss this in showrooms and etc. We go social media in some aspects, complain about this. And to enable you to become a customer-centric organization in the future, applying this new technology like machine learning and etc., you need to leverage this technology to go and track customers' information when they provide this feedback to you to enable you to improve the service. You're just not relying in a simple metric or a simple measure and ignore others. What we found key fundamental really insights in this research. One, sometimes customers give us 10 out of 10 because there's a very fatigue or just want to get along with whoever market research company asking them or the company asking them. But then in other channels, they are complaining heavily. And in this article, Harvard Business Review, we try to say, you need to follow your customers across different channels when they report their feedback about the service that you offer to them. It might be there are some frictions and there are complementary pictures you need to capture there. And by using machine learning now, there is an advancement now. You can go to unstructured data like text analytics and other, if you like, new techniques to enable you really to come up with the right insights and see what you can do better to improve the service for your customers.
Thank you very much. Any addition from any of our guest panels?
I think just to say that in the housing sector, we're a long way off that being the norm. When we build new build housing in this country, you get what you're given. And we don't really have any way of capturing post-occupancy feedback in any meaningful way and feeding it back into the design and production process. So I think in the housing sector, we're a long way off that learning process.
Yes, and this is what I think, Dr. Zaki, you called seamless customer experience, which is different from customer satisfaction. It's even more than just satisfaction, right?
Yeah, that's correct. So again, the problem that we see even in construction developers who actually provide the service and the housing here to the consumers or occupancy, they focus product-centric way, right? So this is a product, this is a cost, this is a profit I can get, But the last things in the equation is what the consumer wants and what the consumer can see. How many of us, have houses, snagging problems, new houses, old houses, and etc. So, and always reporting that to the developers and etc. And they take time, they don't rely. We just get you the house, like Jim was saying, that's the end of it. But in the future, what I'm trying to come here to a point, we need to worry about the new entrants, right? We saw a lot of sectors has been disrupted by startups, by organization that comes from different sectors and different industry. And actually, they can get closer from the customer better by using digital technology. So I think it's a question here to constructions and developers, how they can take that forward, specifically in the future generation, to fulfill the demand, which is important to get the houses and etc., which is a function they aim to, but also as well leverage that seamless experience to become more customer-centric and get closer for their customers, what they want, what they need from the service that is being delivered to them.
Alan, any last thoughts?
Yeah, I think there is also a role for the iPhone. The iPhone did to the mobile phone sector what the iHouse could do to the housing sector, but we've no idea what that is. But it was a handful of people, literally, who conceived that. And there was, so far as I'm aware, very little in the way of customer research before the launch. After the launch, they did lots.
Thank you, Alan.
I agree, Alan. Typically, what we call it in experience, there is a pre-launch, there is within the activity and after the activity. Typically, firms focus about the after service has been delivered, but actually, sometimes company doesn't look and manage and monitor what's going before, what's going within that kind of interaction. This is why interaction is really important to be, if you like, split it into that three discussion.
I think we're about to close the roundtable, and one thing I'm going to ask you, dear panel, is in one word, keyword, or one sentence, what is for you the future of digital house?
Seems to me what's come out of this for me is that digitization, or the test of digitization is, does it facilitate human-to-human contact?
Thank you.
For me, I would say organization, from organization perspective, digitalization perspectives, they need to configure their future services, how to integrate digital and physical and social together. And this is where the future will look like. This will open new opportunities, but there will a lot of challenges they will face to enable them to reach to that maturity. So organization need to start thinking about how this integration will look like and what kind of challenges will be and how we can address them.
Dr. Gemma Burgess, your last word.
Thank you. I think my point would be around connectivity. The future has to be a way in which we use all this data, we harness this technology for connectivity purposes, but with the goal of improving people's quality of life. And I think that's what the goal has to be. We have to have homes that are built off-site in a digitized process where data is easily shared across the process, shared with the end user, where the product at the end is a smart home that connects in real time with the wider smart city, that wider ecosystem of digital twins, where our home is integrated into our health systems, where the core purpose of all of this is about improving quality of life.
Today is Friday, April 6, 2035. Tom Smith's work week is coming to an end. He's very satisfied with the small, removable space suitable for remote working that he has in his accommodation. Right, with good sound insulation, with quality connection, the space is his haven of concentration for complex tasks. He co-designed it using a 3D configurator in his private living room. He also made new contacts in the co-working space on the ground floor. The use at a preferential rate for residents is automatically transferred to their monthly service bill. 8 p.m. It's time to join the neighbors' aperitif, an event organized to present a report on uses and consumption. Thanks to the training of the residents in piloting applications, the objectives of self-sufficiency in water and energy have been met. Tom also hopes to get information about the vehicle-to-home facility that will help him to better manage his energy. The technology capable of storing and transferring energy to an electric vehicle in a home acts as a backup power supply for peak consumption.